I tried to post this video yesterday, and I now have to redo it. The file just won't load for whatever reason, which kind of sucks because I was still in the process of channeling a lot of Lord Saturn, who had a lot of very interesting things to say. Yesterday I did a long channeling session with Lord Saturn, and Lord Saturn comes to me from my Wiccan tradition as the Holly King, and I hold his energies for one half of the year, and then I hold the energies of the Oak King for the other half. A lot of you will know him as Old Man Winter, the Reaper, the Harvester. Others will know him as Kronos. He is the Lord and Master of restriction, of time, of space, distance, limitation, and ultimately death. But he isn't the keeper of the dead like Hades would be, or Hell, or Pluto, or Orcus. He is a entity that sets and measures time, sets and measures cycles, and sets and measures duration, and creates obstacles for people either to be limited by or become stronger by overcoming. In his older days, especially the Romans, they worshipped him for physical strength, and he was very prominent as an agricultural deity as well. He's a bit on the grim side and can be a little harsh, but he's worth getting to know. I actually started channeling him because of an interesting bit of information that I picked up a couple days ago, and I did some summoning with Metatron, and Metatron pointed me in the direction of Saturn to get my answers, and he gave me plenty of answers. Wow, I'm just not working this. It's early, so let me turn that up. There we go. Yeah, and wow, he's feeling like he's trying to. Okay. So oh geez, Saturn feels like he's wanting to come back in, and I'm not sure I'm in the right place for that to happen. This was the picture that he really liked. That is yours truly, still somewhat being or allowing Saturn to flow through me. It's interesting how I hadn't even thought of channeling Saturn yesterday, but I had my t-shirt, my black t-shirt on with the big number 3 on it, and which black is his color, and 3 is the planetary color of Saturn, and the planetary sphere of influence called Binah, which is on the Tree of Life and is the 3rd sphere. So it was. I wonder if he hadn't already figured out that I was going to do some channeling that day and put me in the appropriate attire to help that come through. And he definitely stayed for most of the day. Yeah, he really wants to come through again. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna let him do that. Oh, okay. When this happens, it feels like I can't breathe for a little bit, and there's intense pressure on the back of my head, and I get some really thick, heavy chills that go down the back of my neck and my arms, and it's just really heavy. And he's such a strong deity that, okay, he wants me to remind people about Thor. Apparently there was a wrestling match between him and Thor in a story where Thor was tricked into wrestling Death, and Death came as the guise of an old woman. Thor was able, according to Saturn, Thor was wrestled down to a knee, but was not able to be pinned. Thor says that he put Death to a knee, and Death was able to fight back up. In essence, this basically means that no one can fight their time, no one can fight death, that it eventually will come for all things, including that which is the highest and most divine, which is just a weird idea and concept anyways, but that Saturn is definitely a mighty character, and he also is Therm. Well, he relates a lot to Therm. Therm is a powerful, I would not do a lot of work with Therm unless you really, in fact, I'm just going to say don't, because his is such a much darker, colder force than I think most of you could really understand. He was the big giant that took over and froze the earth into his own kind of twisted paradise, icy twisted paradise, and then Thor had to come along and break it free. And there's a big seasonal story between Thor and Therm that I actually had to play out to become a full priest of Thor, which I talked about on my Thor videos. So Saturn has a lot of those powers. He is very his strength is based in freezing and cold and keeping things. His strength holds together the physical reality of the world. Thor is also said to hold together the fabric of the world too, making sure that physicality remains, for the most part, seemingly unchanged. Although it's like a kabuki theater, even though things don't seem like they're changing, they really are constantly all around you. So Thor and Saturn, now, Saturn is really coming through. Saturn really wants you to know that he is greatly responsible for holding together physicality, and he is responsible for ending or making sure that those catalysts happen so that the old leave and the new can come in. Primarily, he says that he is viewed as a castrated deity, not because he necessarily really was, it's just because of the energies that he holds. He can't proliferate any more of himself, and thus when he comes to an end, which is a hard concept because he says it'll happen, but not any time into which any human could ever figure or would ever live to see in any type of evolution whatsoever, that too would be the end. And he promises there's a beginning to that, and there's a lot of high occult stuff that he's putting through me right now that I don't have time to really kind of figure out. I'm just giving you the basics of what he's putting through. Man, it's hard to channel because I'm not fully there. I'm getting brief bits of it as it kind of comes through. His main purpose is the fact that he is coming out. I want to say I am coming out because that's what Saturn's saying. I am coming out. Lord Saturn is coming out as a major opposition to the Illuminati. He has been for a long time, but no one really has sought to look there. He says that the Illuminati is a highly unnatural and he says corrupted cycle that needs to come to an end. They feel as though they can outsmart him, that their life extending technologies can bypass death and end times, and he says that is beyond foolish, and that there are going to be appropriate repercussions for that. And coming from somebody like the Holly King and Lord Saturn, that really, I don't want to know what that means, but that's not good. It's very unpleasant. He also wants me to channel through that he is very willing to work with anyone out there right now who would like to see the end of the Illuminati. He is also very much against any of the reptilian and interdimensional extraterrestrial engineering that is going on, because humans have their own evolutionary natural cycle that has been unnaturally increased. and he would like to see that return to a more natural state. He says that humans have their own evolutionary purpose towards freedom or slavery, and that he is not necessarily compassionate towards whatever one that we pick, because it would be our natural choice. He says, however, that the unnatural cycle that we've been put into with our unnatural evolution that has sped us unfairly towards slavery must come to an end. And so he is very much about cutting that out. He would very much love to help harvest that out of our genetic DNA. He says there are some things that humans should keep, that we would have evolved to having those, especially psychic abilities, by this time in our natural evolution anyways, but that we are about 500 to 600 years above schedule of where we naturally should be. I don't know what that would necessarily look like, having that all removed, but I do feel that the Illuminati being just stamped out of existence would be a preferable thing. He says that we do have extraterrestrial and interdimensional allies. He is being one of them as interdimensional, not necessarily extraterrestrial, but that they're definitely out there, and that the Illuminati, or I should say the reptilians, would have fully taken over this planet 100 some odd years ago if they had the resources and the manpower to do it. That they are, while humans go to a spiritual evolution as in a less physically dense state, the reptilians go to a far more physically dense state, and because of this are rooted in fear and paranoia, and even mating between the race is rare. Offspring is rare, and a lot of times murders happen while they actually try to propagate the race, because there's a true power struggle that happens, and it doesn't usually end very well. So their race is dwindling, mainly because there was a huge portion that was split off from the main race that went through, he's showing me like a time tunnel, so I'm going to assume that's a wormhole, and they were chased off. They were kicked out of a whole other universe for doing what they're doing here, but not all of them went through the same time tunnel, I guess. So who knows? I don't know if that means that they were from way, way, way in the past or way, way, way in the future, but for whatever, they've ended up in our time cycle present. So I would assume that that means that they're from even another timeline, which sounds funny to me, but Lord Saturn, it's no issue for him. That's just what he's about. He also wants to talk about the Greys, and he says that the Greys are not necessarily part of the original reptilian agenda, that they are another alien race that has that isn't too far away, or isn't, I guess a location, because he shows a whole other universe as well, but it's not as far away as the reptilians are, and that they are a race that is solely on their last legs, and are much more into the cloning and hybridization, and actually now have to steal the reproductive fluids of another race so that they can propagate, and they are having a hard time engineering humans with the DNA structure of Greys. They can create hybrids, but the hybrids generally don't live very long, and they have to go outside of even humans. They've experimented with adding animal DNA and an actual reptilian DNA, but the reptilians don't necessarily like that because they view themselves as a higher race, and they generally have to get that DNA through coercion, murder, which has a whole other issue, because reptilians, even though they are highly paranoid among each other, hate other races even more, and will come together to take over and slaughter another race that has harmed one of theirs. So they've attempted, and he's telling me now that the experience that I had in Dulce had a lot to do with that it was a hybrided creature with some reptilian DNA. And he says he's proud. he's proud that I handled myself. So Wow, there's a lot of information still coming through. I might actually do a part 2 with this now that I'm actually in the channeling. Yeah, let me do that.